Okay, go ahead.
We had a dinner after the funeral, and it was kind of a miserable day, so it was good to get inside. And Mitchell had made all the arrangements, and it was a lovely meal. But then when at the beginning of the meal, he gave a toast. Everybody had a drink, and he said, "Now here's to my brother." It's the first time he ever bought me a drink, which of course Dick didn't approve of drinking. And of course they all drank to excess, and Mitchell was really he squandered a lot of money on drink, which should have gone to the household or his wife.
Nick didn't approve of drinking? Nick didn't approve of drinking?
Well, they drank to excess, and Mitchell especially. When he drank, he got very miserable. So he'd go into a bar, get in an argument, get in a fight. They'd rip his coat off of him, so he'd come home with a black eye, and his coat was ripped, and he should have been spending that money on his wife. She never had a decent set of dishes for many years because he just wasted it all. But anyway, that was the funeral. And then what the tradition is also, in 40 days, you have to go through the same thing. You have to have another Feast of Mercy.
Feast of Mercy.
So then we went to the same place 40 days later,
Wow.
had a meal, but of course there was no funeral, so there wasn't huge numbers of people. But I still probably have the receipt for what I had to pay for that meal. And in those days, it seemed like a lot of money, but it was $500 or $600 or something. But anyway, that was it. I got in the car and drove home. Went to work on Monday probably, resumed my life as a teacher. And I must say that the people at my job at Council Rock were just terrific. They gave me a couple of days where I could drive up to Doylestown and see about probating, I think it's called, the will. So I wouldn't have to take a sick day. They'd let me go and come back at 11 o'clock or something. And the superintendent of schools was a Dr. Karam, and that was a new thing in our neighborhood. He was Lebanese. So, of course, he was especially interested in me, and when Nick died, he came to the house and visited me. And Shelley was dating a guy named Rob Stetson. His mother was a teacher. She came. And during the week that followed, we had I guess it was probably several weeks later, they had a dance at the junior high. And Shelley would have been in junior high. And she had sewed herself a beautiful, beautiful dress to wear to that dance. And everybody said, "Well, you're not going to let her go. We're in mourning. She can't go to that dance." But the guy, Rob Stetson, who was going to take her, was her boyfriend, and he was a nice kid, and his mother was a teacher. So she came to the house, and she said, "We'll understand whatever you decide. But he's not going to go with anybody else," because they were just very tight. So the night of the dance, it was the worst blizzard, ice, and Shelley had this, pretty short dress. It was a sort of a lavender silk with pearl buttons. It was very cute. And so his father drove over because I wouldn't have been able to drive on that kind of ice. Father drove over and took her, so she got to go to the dance. Which, I guess people criticize me, but...
No, I think it was good for her probably.
But it meant a lot to her, and of course, she was trying to cope with the situation, and I think I was probably not a very good mother at that point because I was so concerned with my own grief and trying to get along in the world that I didn't understand what teenagers were like. And Shelley was pretty rebellious. But she had a right to be because she suffered a loss. But she didn't understand that I had too, and I didn't understand her. So that was kind of sad. But Gloria had a job, so she was working. And
Where was she living?
home,
Mom was living here?
yeah.
Was she still in college?
No, she'd graduated.
So she was here and Dad was up in Boston.
She had graduated in June, and this thing took place in November.
And she was here and Dad was in Boston at seminary, right?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I think he was, if he graduated from college that same year, which he did, I'm not sure what Jürgen was doing, but he probably had a summer job at the camp, at some camp. Or maybe he was getting, I know they already had student housing. So they already had their apartment when they were going to get married in September. And of course they didn't get married, but Nick died in November. But they already had their student apartment, which was given to them by the seminary.
But they were going to get married in September
And they
1970.
Yeah,
Right. So it's a 1 year after Nick died.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I get mixed up. If he died in '69, they were already married.
No. They weren't married yet.
They weren't married, but that was why she didn't want to get married. She was afraid that he would disapprove. And so he was still controlling her from the grave. She didn't
When
want
did they get engaged?
They got engaged, let's see, I would say sometime in about a month before. You'll have to ask her. Because I know she worked at Johnsville Naval Air Station. And she had a good job, a very good job, because it was government. And you got time and a half for overtime. Double time if it was a holiday. So she worked on the 4th of July and she was getting quite a lot of money. But she met a guy that she worked with, and he was a divorced man from the Washington area. He was on assignment, and he spent a lot of time with her, and he spent a lot of time here with us. And he was a neat guy, and but he was married, and he would be the one. He'd take her to the airport to go see Jürgen. He'd pick her up at the airport and bring her home from her trip. And one of those weekends, she got the engagement ring.
Okay.
And she showed it to her father. And he said, this is in Shelley's story. Shelley wrote a story about Nick,
Yeah.
which you've read.
Yeah.
And so she showed Nick the ring. And he said, well, I don't approve, but I'll give you a nice wedding. I'll do what's right if you insist on marrying him. So when it came time for her to get married, she was thinking he didn't approve. He wasn't there to walk her down the aisle, to give her, his blessing. So I think that entered in. Plus she was exhausted from all this overtime.
Yeah.
She was so good at what she did. And willing, because she was single, she worked all hours of the night and day. And Kirby was right there. So it occurred to me when she was going through these wrenches all up and down the house, should she go through with it, maybe she's in love with Kirby. Oh my gosh, that can't be. Because he was always there for her, and they talked the same language, which Jürgen couldn't know what a computer looked like if it flew by. So anyway, plus a lot of the stuff that Gloria was working on was naval intelligence, anti-ballistic missiles, anti-submarine warfare, and of course Jürgen was a pacifist.
Right.
So you get the picture.
Right.
But anyway, Shelley and Jenny resumed their high school, and then of course went to college. And
Wait, but so let's keep track. So then mom didn't, obviously what happened on her wedding, what happened. We don't have to do the details. But
Well,
then, so that was.
then the next step, I don't know if I told you this or not, but we had the reception anyway. I had paid the money and reserved the place, which was a beautiful restaurant.
How many people were there?
Well, the Brooklyn folks, Mitchell and Mary, George and Doris, my mother, myself, not too many others. I can't think of who else was there. I probably could.
I thought there were like 100 people or something.
Well, they may have come to the church, but nothing happened.
Right.
So then we went to the reception, and I saved the top layer of the cake, and I brought it home. We had a nice meal. We had I don't know if we had champagne or not, but and Father Umboden, the priest, he and his wife came, and they were there for me. That was to support me in my grief, or my whatever I was suffering at that point. So I brought the cake home, put it in the freezer, and then a few weeks later, when we found out that Gloria and Jurgen had eloped and they had gotten married in their apartment on Kirkland Street in Cambridge, that was where they were going to live.
Mm-hmm.
And they had gotten married by Milton Seville, who was Jurgen's friend from seminary. So we went up, we took the cake, and of course Inga and Papa came, and we had a piece of the wedding cake. We got to see their apartment, and
That's nice.
it all turned out well.
Yes.
Happily turned out, but it looked pretty bleak for a while there. And of course Papa had gotten involved already. He built a lot of shelves and counters for them, so it was a pretty nice apartment. But they had a cat, they always had a cat, and the cat ran away from home, and we thought the cat was lost.
Was that Ziggy? No.
I don't know, but then across the street was the Harvard Library. So we could look down from the apartment and see the front doors, which were glass. And so we looked over, and my gosh, the darn cat was looking out of the window in the library. Wanted to get a little education. So that started their married life. And of course, Gloria didn't have a job. So she got a job working at Samovar's, I think that was the name of the place, gourmet food purveyor. And she got to wait on Julia Child, who lived in the neighborhood.
Oh, I never heard that story.
Well, I could be wrong, but if your mother sees this and she'll say, oh, that's not true. Anyway, sooner or later they got to see Julia's house, because somebody from the Church of the Advent was her bookkeeper, and he had a party and invited them.
The Winchester Church, not Advent.
No, the Advent.
Oh.
That was later, much later.
Oh, much later. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, what do you want to know next about Shelley?
So that's what Mom was doing when Nick died, and Gail was living at home as well? Or was she still at Smith?
She graduated from Smith in 1972.
So she was still at Smith.
She was in her, I think, one of her last years, and the irony of it was that when she went away to school in September, she was having a fight with her father then, and he was in the cellar making furniture, and she never said goodbye to him. And I think that was too bad, because she got a ride with somebody that she knew. I didn't even have to take her. But she went to Smith, and she was mad because she wanted to go to Atlantic City, some weekend thing they were going to have. And Nick had heard that all these hippies were dancing nude in the fountains or something as part of the celebration, whatever it was that they were. maybe a rock band or something. I don't know. I don't remember. All these things float in and out of my memory because some of them I don't even want to think about.
Right.
You know, they're too painful to remember. But Gail graduated, and in 1972. In the meantime, Paul came to her graduation. He had met her in Washington years before because her boyfriend Alan, whom Nick hated, went to Georgetown, and so did Paul.
Oh.
And they had a big rooming house with a lot of guys in it. They did their own cooking. And Gail had been invited to a weekend with Alan. So she met Paul then. And I think she thought he was pretty nice right at the beginning. So when he graduated from Georgetown, his grandmother, Kolakowski, gave him, I think, either a sum of money or whatever, so he could buy a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to London, wherever the motorcycles were made. He went to the factory and bought it, and then got on the motorcycle and rode all through Europe.
Wow.
And he kept a journal, and I think he was thinking then that he would become a writer. And he kept it, and whenever he'd go to different campgrounds or whatever, he'd meet people, and everybody was high half the time, I suppose, or, you know, having a real good time together, young people. So he ended up he met Gail in Italy. She had part of her junior year in Italy, and he knew she was there, so he came, and they reconnected, and when she graduated, he came to the graduation. I don't know how many times they saw each other in the meantime, but they moved in together. And that sent his mother into orbit, absolutely devastated. So they weren't about to change that, but problem was that